I know that has sometimes been an issue with these audio settings, so I'm going to open up the discussion and okay, good, echo is gone. I'm so happy. And it looks like we're here on Facebook, and for those of you on YouTube as well, welcome back. And I love, for those of you, especially in the Facebook group, I've loved reading your comments, your experiences from day one. Loved even reading those of you who've chosen to share your practice journals or even some practice videos. That's so amazing, and thank you also for sharing elsewhere on social media, helping spread the word, helping grow our trials group and to get more people playing this Violympic theme. And I don't know if you know this, but one of your number has already composed and typeset an entire piano accompaniment for the Violympic theme. So I'm seeing if I might be able to share that with everyone if he hasn't already gone ahead and done that, all the way from Israel. So thank you so much. That looks amazing. Just a word of clarification for all of you about sharing. All of that is welcome, and in fact, I think that really, for me anyway, it increases my motivation. Whenever I've got a project, if I can share it with, my wife or colleagues, mentors, whatever, that always helps me keep going. I know there are other people in my corner. That's a different thing, I think, from scoring the points in these trials, although I did try to design the system so that if you do things that help you score points, it'll also help your motivation and your accomplishments this week. But just so you know, you don't have to post anything publicly in order to score points for this. You can follow along all by your lonesome and just keep records. And then at the end of the trials, if you feel that you have a really strong point total and you want to let me know about it and let Kate, our community manager, know about it, then you let us know. And at that point, we'll want your records. Show us your journal pages filled out. If you were here for the sessions live, show us screenshots that show you were with us live. Show us screenshots of your social shares and all that. And then, of course, the final performance video, which is so much a part of this Violympic Trials project. That too, you don't have to share it. What I want you to do is to make the video and to upload it. YouTube, you can do an unlisted video. Nobody then will see it unless you give them the link. And you can do that. That's proof enough for me that you made your video if you want to share that with me at the end. But again, you don't have to share anything ever if you don't want to, and certainly not publicly. So just hopefully that clarifies a few of the sharing questions. I love sharing, but that can be up to you how you want to do it. So today we're going to continue, as I say in the document on practice strategies and assignments. The first 3 days are chock full of techniques. What's in this piece? What do you need to be able to do in order to play it easily and effectively? And we just kind of go through them one by one with examples from the theme. If you're wondering a couple things, where's the music to this so-called Violympic theme? Or what is this document called a journal? Or this other document about practice strategies and assignments? Then that may mean that you have not registered for the trials. So if that describes you, go ahead and do it right now. If you're on YouTube, there's a link right there to register. You'll get everything emailed to you then. There are a few of you who have registered. You still didn't get emails. Things happen sometimes. Post in the group, or just you can email me and see if we can get you sorted out. So with those things out of the way, let's start on our day 2 techniques. And the first one is bowing patterns. And so if you look in the theme at rehearsal E, that section from E to F, obviously I just had fun kind of throwing a bunch of different bowing patterns at you. We've got 3 and 1, 2 slurred, 2 separate, and finally separate bows, which in my performance video you probably saw. I played very on, very connected. So to explore these, you could do a lot worse, of course, than going back to the good old favorite Kreutzer 2, right? You've probably heard. Such a famous etude. This violin even helped make it famous, thanks to Jack Benny. But in most printed editions of Kreutzer's second etude, there are a whole bunch of bowing variations right before it, and those are just gold. So I want you to start with my assignment, of course, for the bowing patterns, which I'm about to go over. But if you want even more, there's a treasure trove there in Kreutzer 2 that you can perform, and you can also make up your own. But at a minimum, here in this assignment, I want you to practice all 4 of the bowing patterns. So what that means is that you'll play all 4 bars with modifications if you're using my suggested modification. Play all 4 bars with 1 bowing pattern at a time. So instead of the, you're going to play all 4 bars separate bows. I would do it very connected. Something like that. Then next, you'd go slurring as many notes as you can at your tempo. So this is less of a pattern than just you're slurring everything. And, you know, just notice a couple things as you do those first 2. Obviously, when you're playing all separate bows, you're going to hear right away if the coordination is there between the 2 hands, right? If it's not, you'll get something. That means my fingers are a little late to the bow, right? Or something like that means my fingers are early to the bow. There's no one right answer as to whether your fingers or your bow should be leading. For me, it changes depending on the circumstance. So you think of whatever's helpful. If you feel like your bow is setting a great steady pace and you want your fingers to follow along and that's working for you, do that. If instead you find it easier to sync the bow up with what you can see your fingers doing, go ahead and do that. The end goal is going to be the same, right? Very even. And then notice how when you slur, suddenly there's no coordination issue, right? Whenever your fingers move, that's when the note changes. So it's suddenly very easy to tell if your left hand is even or not. Or is it? I always exaggerate to make a point. But you'll be able to hear that. And so by playing even just these first 2 patterns, you're already going to solve a lot of potential rhythm issues in the 2 hands. Then you're going to play all the bars slurring 3 and 1. So just as the first bar is written, you'll do that with all of them. Notice how I gradually end up working my way up the bow. If you don't do something to counteract what's bound to happen naturally, then you'll very quickly end up at the tip. So what I want you to do when you're playing that pattern for 4 bars, save a little bit on the down bow, make up some of the bow on the up bow. You're probably still going to work your way down the bow somewhat. If you go overboard making up that bow, so now it seems great, I'm not working my way up the bow at all, but I'm getting a huge accent on that last note. See if you can come to some kind of understanding, some kind of middle ground where you're not accenting, but you're still able to play the 4 bars with that pattern. So that's 3 and 1, 1 and 3. Same problem, so I would suggest that you start this more in the upper half. That one, truthfully, is a little bit more difficult because now the separate note is a down bow, which is that much likelier to get kicked, to get accented. Pardon me. And finally, 2 slurred and 2 separate. You know, in my written material, I realized I just said 2 and 2. I meant 2 slurred and 2 separate. So now you don't have to worry about the bow traveling anywhere on you. All you want to do is even out that rhythm, even out that sound. So those are the bowing patterns. And do this at whatever tempo. You notice that everything I just did was under tempo. Play it under tempo, play it even more under tempo. The point is to hear your sound in those different bowing patterns and to get the rhythm as even as possible, no matter what bowing pattern you're using. All right, now this is a fun one, these bow circles, and I'm going to take my phone because that's my metronome app. Well, it's in here somewhere. So, bow circles. If you grew up Suzuki, like I did, pretty early on you had to learn bow circles, right? Maybe even you had to do the stuff in the air. I forget what all the names were. This was telephone poles, I remember, because they were straight up and down. This was windshield wipers. There are a bunch more. I'm sure all you guys and girls out there that teach Suzuki or remember your Suzuki days, you'll remember all the different things. Elevator maybe was one of them. The bow circles, that's something I hope you never grow out of, because as a professional and playing an orchestra, I can tell you the time comes pretty often when I'm in one part of the bow, I suddenly need to be in another part of the bow. Sounds like a simple problem, but looking around the orchestra, various colleagues have very different ways of doing that, right? Hopefully none of my colleagues do that. But that's one way. It's a very noisy way. Or there's, and then you don't get back in time. So the ability to be in one part of the bow and efficiently get back to another with exactly the timing you want, that's what we're after. So I'm going to set the metronome for 60, if you can hear that. And what I'm going to do, play a down bow using the whole bow in one beat. So just, and I'm off. I'm going to use beats 2, 3, and 4 to circle the bow back to the frog. And while I do that, I don't want the bow to just go anywhere while I'm circling. I want it to stay exactly shaped as it was, directly over that contact point that I had. 2, 3, 4, boom. And I land again just before the next beat 1, just before I want to play again. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't want to get there too early and have to wait, but I certainly don't want to get there late for 1 and land from the air. That's a no-no. So after I've done that enough to get comfortable, turn that off momentarily. After I've done that enough to get comfortable, I'm going to reduce the time I need for the circle. Now, if doing that on a whole down bow is a little bit too much, if that bow doesn't want to stay straight for a whole down bow, do it with half a bow. Still use the metronome. Still look to keep that bow nice and over its contact point. In other words, one of the common things I see is as the bow comes off, it's way out here. Then you've got to get it exactly back where it was. You don't want to be doing that. So I'm going to play now just 2 beats worth of circle. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, always timing it. An even circle, getting back just before the click. And then finally, a 1-beat bow circle. So. Some of you might notice that your fingers need to be slightly firmer, especially on the release and in the air, than they may have been in the past. If you were used to just kind of letting everything go at this point, you may realize that you need to maintain whatever reasonable strength in the fingers that you have during the bow stroke. That's an important realization. So no reason you have to keep the metronome at 60. You can bump it up as you get more comfortable with that. And I also say, if you're feeling ambitious, repeat the whole thing with up bows. So let me put the metronome on 90. And I'll do some of these up bow, yeah? I'll do some 1-beat circles. That feels pretty fast. But that can be a nice challenge for those of you who have already mastered the slower ones and the down bow ones. Martelet. And really what this is about is being able to give articulation with the fingers while the bow's on the string. So right in the beginning, we have an example, right? So I did the wrong bowing. So whether it's hooked or separate, I want articulation on those little notes. And some of you may have played a Kreutzer Etude number 4 that really teaches this technique. Or faster. I'm concerned mostly with the slow one now, just the ability to be able to. So I have an interesting game that you can try, especially if you've never done this before. This can quickly become an obsession. I call it the popcorn game. And what we're trying to do is first to put the bow on the string. You know what? Start on the G string. It's easiest on the G string. And put it near the fingerboard. Have enough bow pressure that you can actually. Whoops, I made a sound. Right now I don't want to make a sound. Have enough bow pressure that you can grab that string and move it around without actually making a sound. Feel how now you've got enough friction on the string that can happen. Perhaps you need to rosin your bow if, if you're not able to do that. Now if I use too little pressure, right, then that bow is going to start traveling. But just in between, there's going to be an amount of pressure where it's right on the border, right? And where if I tug just a little, it'll make a sound. Ah, you heard that? That's what I call popcorn. That was a little draggy. I dragged the bow instead. I want just one little pop. There we go. There we go. Yeah. So you're finding that borderline amount of pressure. And you know, the pressure in the lower part of the bow can come mostly from the pinky side of the hand, right? Whereas, and you can call it pressure, you can call it weight, whatever you like. It's leverage. Your thumb is the fulcrum of the lever. In the upper part of the bow, it's going to come more from this side of the hand. So if I'm down here, I'm going to be feeling it more in the pinky. And I suggest the G string because it's the thickest string. It's easiest to make it happen there. And again, do it out near the fingerboard. If I'm in the upper part of the bow, then it's more on the index finger side of the hand, right? That's dragging. Still dragging. There we go. There's one popcorn. See, I need some practice in the popcorn game. So you try that on all 4 strings and in different parts of the bow. Now, what comes next is going to seem easy after that. You're going to play a up-down pattern starting here. So let's say we had an open D string. You're going to set that bow, right, with a little pressure, such that if you could tug on the string a little bit without it moving, And then using the fingers, you're going to make just a quick little sound, and it's going to stay on the string. Yeah? So it's going to be an up, down, but you're not going to feel your arm play up, down. Arm's only going to do down. The fingers will take care of up. Then you're going to repeat it in the upper half, down, up instead. So you're going to set that bow, enough pressure that you can tug on the string, and then release it with the fingers. So, down at the frog here, when I make my little quick up, my fingers go in this direction, yeah? Up here, they're going to go in the opposite direction. They're going to get longer. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing. In the beginning of this tune. So you've got your down up and your up down off the string playing. And some of you may never have played off the string. This will be a great way to start, because off the string playing always has its basis in on the string playing. And that's something that is, I think, easy to lose sight of as we get older and more sophisticated, and we do all these different bow strokes, and then we wake up one day and something doesn't work. Something isn't coordinated. What's the problem? Well, my first step is always to go back to on the string. So I'm suggesting eighth notes at quarter equals 120. 120 is the tempo of our tune here. So you can do that, or any comfortable tempo. But open A string, first play on the string. And even though that sounds easy to do, I want you to be strict with your sound. If you're hearing, yeah, that's on the string, but it's not an even sound, what I would call an even sound end to end of the bow. I know we're not using the whole bow, but however much bow you are using, I want it to be the same sound, very much a vowel sound, rather than where you can hear the beginning of each stroke. That's not what I want. Find that balance between the thumb and the fingers. I love to feel like my thumb and all four fingers have the same amount of contact, same amount of pressure on the bow. And for some of you, it may be a little bit more strength in the fingers than you're used to. I don't mean grip strength, but just strength in terms of resisting flexion. Because for this, and in general, honestly, I don't really want to see a whole lot of this. It would only be for brief moments like what we were doing, something like that. But in general, détaché playing or off the string playing, nah. You may have to adjust your contact point or some of the other 3 bow variables. Well, not some. I guess there's only 2 other ones, aren't there? To find that pure sound. I want both bows down and up to be even. I don't want the downs stronger than the ups. It's usually that way around if it's going to be one way. And I don't want some notes to speak while others, that's not a consistent sound. So I promise this will pay off, because next you're going to notice your contact point, your speed, your pressure, everything about how this stroke feels. You want to keep that exactly the same, except you're going to play it just maybe half an inch off the string. Same part of the bow, same feel, same contact point and everything. Let's say I were doing it faster. I might want to be a little higher in the bow, because that would be more comfortable on the string. I also find that I happen to like it a little further from the bridge. No surprise, because the bow's moving faster. Also no surprise that that would be where I'd play it off the string. And again, you see my fingers are not doing anything weird. They're not going like that now that I'm playing off the string. On looks like this. Off. All the same. I want you to do it also on the D string. Same process. And finally, to alternate open Ds and open As. I'm going to go back to our 120 tempo now, which was okay, so I'm alternating Ds and As. Try it starting down on the A. And also try it starting up on the A. Modify the tempo as you need. If the sound ever gets weird, if it starts sounding bad, go back to on the string. Find that contact point, that amount of bow that's making that sound good. And if this doesn't happen for you immediately, no sweat. You get so much value out of being picky with your on the string sound, because in your life you're going to play a lot more on than off. And as you keep experimenting with this, you may find that in a very few more days you are able to play off at different tempos. My last word to you on this was to keep your arm, just as we did some yesterday, keep your arm in between those D and A strings and let your hand navigate the two strings. Right, so my arm's not going 80, 80, it's the hand. And of course this feeds directly into how you'll play. Where my arm will take me to the G string and back, but not in between the D and A. All right, congratulations. We got just 2 more assignments to look at. One of them is not going to take me long to explain right here because I've already done it in a YouTube video. And I certainly don't want to rush the explanation here. So I prefer that prior to doing this vibrato assignment, you look at the YouTube video I made. It's called How to Get a Flexible, Effortless Vibrato. And I take inspiration pretty directly from the Simon Fisher book that's called Warming Up. I think I have that one here too. Yes, Warming Up, another great book by Simon Fisher. You can tell I really love his stuff. And I use many parts of his book Warming Up in my own warm-up. But he's got a great way of looking at vibrato. I summarize it there. It's probably a 10-minute video. If you will watch that, there are 4 different motions that I want you to try that will go into a flexible and effortless violin vibrato. And all I want you to do is to try those 4 motions. See if you can get a sense from watching that video what they are. They all have certain things in common. They're all based on circles, which of course is a great way to think about vibrato rather than a straight back and forth line, down, up, down, up. Instead, we're thinking of circles which only ever move in one direction, up, up, up. And you'll get more what I mean if you watch that video. Try those 4 motions. Some of them, well, for every violinist, some of those 4 motions are going to happen more naturally than others. Make sure you try all 4, and if you're confused about how one of them works still after watching the video and trying it out, post in the group, and either myself or some more experienced members may be able to help you out. Last assignment is expressive shifting. I even hesitate to say that because in my way of thinking, all shifting is expressive in the way that you move on the fingerboard. It's just how fast it happens and when it happens compared to a bow change. That'll determine whether your listeners hear it or not. But I would really love for you to get out of the mindset that there's mechanical shifting and then there's this beautiful, sexy shifting. It should all be beautiful and sexy. Some may just be faster than others. So I want you to pick 1 or 2 shifts between rehearsals C and D that are expressive shifts. And in my assignments I write that means they're new finger shifts. We touched on this yesterday, but if I'm shifting between those two notes on the G string, 2 to 3, let's say, I could play. I'm shifting with the 2, dropping the 3. If I do that slower, if I do it faster and later, you either don't hear it or barely hear it at all. Here's how that shift would sound if it were slurred, or faster and later. A new finger shift, right, is going to be the 3rd finger. So if I'm doing that on separate bows, it's also going to be on the new bow. New finger, new bow. That's super slow and early. Here's later and faster. And that sounds a little bit more in line with what we might expect to hear in a real piece. If I slur that one, of course, now, between rehearsal C and D in the piece, there are a number of good candidates. I mentioned bar 27, or the big shift from 29 into 30. That's the B flat to B flat. I believe it's 1 first finger to a 3rd finger. Play each shift in a single bow, slurred, vibrating if possible on both notes. So, and we're doing this as a new finger shift, remember? So I'm shifting with the 3rd finger, sliding with the 3rd finger. Both bow directions. And I ask you to repeat it 10 times. Remember that you should be listening on the way up so that you can arrive exactly where you want to arrive. It shouldn't be a question where you're going to arrive. Don't just try to hit it. Nah. Do it slowly enough that you can hear. Then play the shifts on separate bows. And notice that the entire shift will happen on the new finger and on the new bow. And you're going to do that 10 times. So if I'm doing this shift, the whole shift happens on the new finger, that's a 3, and on the new bow, that's a down bow. So the arrival, the pitch is never in question. I can hear it on the way up. When I arrive, I have vibrato. That is excellent practice. Again, you're not trying to hit the shift. I can't say that enough. It's a little bit like Yoda says, right? Do or not do, there is no try. There shouldn't be a try aspect to this except to play it 10 times. You can hear easily where you are in the slide. Do it as slow as you need. When you arrive, you've got your great sound and vibrato. That's how I practice my shifts. I'm not guessing where I'm going to end up, and that's how I want you to practice them too. So, your assignments, briefly, there are a bunch of them, but they almost take longer to talk about than to do, right? And hopefully you had a fun experience doing yesterday's assignments, and hopefully you saw that they didn't take all that long. Maybe they opened your ears, your senses to some new techniques. Day 2 assignments, the bowing patterns, bow circles, martelet, off string, vibrato, for which you need to look at my YouTube video, and expressive shifting, which includes vibrato. So, as always, share what you're doing. If that helps your motivation, for me it always does. In the Facebook group, if you're not part of the group, jump on in. It's super fun. I know Facebook isn't everybody's favorite place, but you can just go to Facebook only for the Violympic Trials group. That's the best place to be on Facebook. And of course, sharing elsewhere on social media is encouraged as well. As I say, that's for me always a fun part of the process. Can't wait to see you back tomorrow, as well as Thursday and Friday, get into days 3, 4, and 5. Tomorrow is our last real day looking at techniques. 4 and 5, more strategy for how to put all this together and get you the best recording of the Violympic theme that you can get. So I'm excited. Thanks so much for being here again, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Bye.